The Kindertransport was a rescue effort that saved some 10,000 Jewish children from Germany and the surrounding countries in the months before the outbreak of World War II by relocating them to the United Kingdom. Now, many were the only members of their family to survive the Holocaust. This month, to mark its 80th anniversary, a group of 42 volunteers bicycled 600 miles from Berlin to London, retracing the Kindertransport route.
Most of the riders you see there were descendants of the Kindertransport, but one of them was an original survivor. 80-year-old Paul Alexander was just 19 months old when he was sent from Germany. Today he lives in Israel and was joined on the memorial bike trip by his son Daniel and his grandson Nadav, and now back from 600 miles. And here in the studio with us, Paul, great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Tell us first, just doing this bike ride through the route.
If I may, one small correction. It's my son Nadav and my grandson Daniel.
I apologize for that.
All
so
right.
So with 3 generations,
exactly,
on a bike together, making that route you made when you were 19 months old, what was the experience of just the actual biking like for you?
Well, it was an immensely emotional experience and very, very exciting from the moment I heard of the opportunity of taking this ride and joining it. It was extremely exciting and emotional from day one till the end of the ride when we got to Harwich, and then from Harwich to London. Exciting every moment of the time, every minute of the ride, and it was simply amazing. What can I say?
Paul, I just want to go on a little about your experience, because many of the people, what happened with your family during the war as one of the Kindertransport?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I was, as you know, I was 1 year, 7 months old. I was born at the end of 1937. A year after I was born, a little less than a year, the Kristallnacht pogrom took place. My father was taken away to Buchenwald, as were the heads of many families, and I was left at home with my mother. My mother heard about the opportunity to send her child away to England to save him through the organization organized by the World Jewish Relief Organization. It was obviously for her an agonizing decision to make, not only because I was her only child, but she'd already lost 2 children before she had me. So I was her only child, and she had to make a decision of life or death. She decided to send me away to safety. I was sent away. I was put in the arms of a nurse, taken to London, and then I was born again. I was given a chance of a new life in London. My father, after I was sent away on August the 20th, July the 14th, 1939, my mother managed to get my father released from Buchenwald. He came to England. He was taken to a camp organized by the relief organizations. My mother stayed alone. Luckily, she received a visa to enter England on the 27th of August, 1939, packed a few bags, hopped onto a train to Holland, and managed to get to England. She arrived in England on September the 1st, the day the war broke out.
Even though you were only 19 months old, I imagine don't have very specific memories. Obviously, an experience like that really changes the course of one's life entirely. How has that, do you think, changed your entire life experience, really, knowing that you went through that as a child and that your family made those very difficult decisions you described?
Well, as I grew up, I knew from an early age that I was what had happened and how I reached the shores of England. I felt always, although I was totally integrated into English life, I always felt that I was a child of refugee children, and I always had it at the back of my mind and always knew it. And I always wanted one day to express my deepest gratitude obviously to my parents for having they made the decision to send me away, but also to the British people for having opened their doors and accepted me into England. And also the man who looked after me in England when I arrived in England, who looked after me for 3 or 4 years until I was reunited with my parents. It's something I've always known, I've always been conscious of, and I've always felt a little bit different in England until I left England and came to Israel.
Well, you've actually had the chance. You said you always wanted to thank the British people. You had a very unique chance to thank the representative of the British people here in the Middle East, Prince William. What was that experience like?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Yes, that your chance to thank the British people quite literally on Prince William's visit to Jerusalem.
Yes, but this was a unique. This bicycle ride was a unique way of commemorating the journey I made when I was a child. It was just something I thought was one of the objectives of joining the ride.
How did you feel during the length through Germany, biking through Germany? How did you feel about that?
Well, I've been to Germany many times. I'm not uncomfortable being in Germany. When I was younger, I was uncomfortable in being in Germany because my parents didn't want to go back to Germany at all. But over the years, I've been to Germany quite a few times, and I obviously thought a lot during the journey of what the children must have thought as they were traveling west to England to safety, because the bike ride actually took exactly the same route as the trains which went to Holland and to the Hook of Holland and then into England. And I thought a lot about how the children must have felt when they were on that journey. Some of them were cross at their parents for having sent them. Some of them were very worried about what lay before them, and some of them were excited at the adventure of going to a foreign country.
So many years later, 80 years later, what did you tell your own son and grandson when making that journey?
Well, all my children and relatives in this country have always known about my future and the way about my participation and my being sent to England, and they have used my story and told my story and done work for schools. And my children know about it. And when I told them that when I got the invitation to join the ride, the first thing I thought of, gosh, my God, this is an amazing thing, this possibility of retracing my journey. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I said straight away, I'm going to do it, not alone. I'm going to do it with my son and my grandson. And I immediately shot off an email to London and said, this is how I'm going to do it. And they immediately responded positively.
Hold that thought. Paul, you were saying earlier that you had always wanted to get a chance to thank the British government for what they did to you, for you. You had such a unique opportunity to do that with Prince William just a few days ago. What was that experience like?
Well, it was an amazing coincidence that the royal visit came up 2 or 3 days after I got back from the end of the bike ride. And when I met him together with another Holocaust survivor, after he told us, he asked certain questions about our experience on the ride and certain questions, I had to tell him that I told him about the bike ride that I had done, and I told him that the bicycle ride, one of the objectives of my bicycle ride was to thank the British people, and that I wanted through him to say thank you to the British people for opening your doors and accepting me and accepting the other children and accepting all the other refugees that came in. And I said it's particularly pertinent and relevant in this day where there are so many refugees. The message I think the Kindertransport gives is one that countries should open their doors and not close them to refugees.
What a relevant message.
A timely
today.
message, indeed. Paul, I have to ask you look like you're in excellent shape for your age, but were there difficult times? We're talking about hundreds of miles of a bike ride when, in a sense, your emotion had to carry you through on this ride.
Emotion and determination. I'm not I trained for the ride, but not hysterically. I was just determined to do it, and I had my son and my grandson next to me, pushing me on, egging me on, feeding me with water and salts and energy bars. There were some difficult moments, especially in Holland when we came across a 40 mile per hour wind against us. It was difficult, but I managed to do it. I was very determined, and I'm delighted that I got to Harwich, and then from Harwich to London in one piece.
And Paul, how much was this race not just about a personal feat, but about preserving history, preserving memory?
I beg about what?
How much was this race about preserving history and memory of what you went through and of the Holocaust itself?
Well, the bike ride was organized by the same organization that in fact took a major part in orchestrating the Kindertransport. Wow. So it was for them a landmark that the ride took place 80 years after they succeeded with such a massive and charitable operation.
What an unbelievable moment in history 80 years ago, and an incredible way to bring it full circle 80 years later. Paul Alexander.
And what a timely message about taking in refugees at the time, because so few were allowed to go in, but the Kindertransport was one of the few bright spots of that,
Absolutely.
Of that era.
Absolutely.
Well, with that incredibly important message these days, as you say, so relevant, from here in the Middle East to Europe to Washington, Paul Alexander, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
I'm very happy to have done it.